Hello everyone, we are back and we are back with the session you're waiting for. So we are here with Sunil Sharma and Ajay Ramasubramaniam. Hello guys, over to you.
Thanks, Gaurav. Hey, thanks everyone. It's a couple of hours sitting in front of your screens on a Friday evening, so I know that it can be a bit taxing. It's early morning for Sunil, and thank you for accepting the request to come and do this AMA with us. Before we get on to that, I would like Sunil to briefly talk about what he's doing with Techstars and the opportunity for Indian startups to apply into it. So, Sunil, over to you.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Ajay. So, yeah, my main job. I do a few things, but my main job is I'm the managing director for Techstars in Toronto. And Techstars, I think many of you know, a highly global technology accelerator venture capital fund. Right now, 45 running actively around the world, including one in Bangalore. But I look after Toronto and brought Techstars to Canada a little over 3.5 years ago. At the time, I was running a venture capital fund as a partner, a fund called Extreme Venture Partners, making early stage investments. And leading into Extreme, I'll tell you a little bit about Backdoor just because it's kind of contextual, and I heard a little of the last panel. I started a tech accelerator of my own called Extreme Startups with some Canadian VC funds, kind of modeled after what I saw in Silicon Valley and in California, where I had just been living. And so it was called Extreme Startups. It's still running today, called Highline. And I had been living in California for 4.5 years, but in a different role. I was a diplomat. So I was Canada's consul general, head of consulate in one of the 3 consulates we have in California. And, in the process of meeting all sorts of CEOs and innovation leaders, I started to sense a few things that were very strong in the ecosystem in the US, but also a few things lacking that we could maybe capitalize on in Canada. So that led me to move back to Canada, try to reinvent my own life, and started a small venture capital fund. And since then, I've been very actively investing, probably more than 150 startup investments in total to date. So I started late, but I think I'm catching up. And Techstars Toronto is my core focus. And our applications actually close on Sunday midnight, December 20th. So if you are interested, and I don't really know everyone who's on this call, but if you are a dynamic tech startup, we want to meet you. And if you're interested, we can talk about Techstars and how we work with our $120,000 investment, and potentially even bringing a headquarter of the company to Canada if so interested. Not required, but if interested. Back to you.
Great. Thanks, Sunil. So what we did was we collected questions from people who had RSVP'd, and we have selected about 8 of them to come to you. So I'm just going to shoot these questions your way, and you can be candid about them. So the first one, so there is a tiny little country to the south of your border, and where you have spent good amount of time, and you came back to the true north to work in the venture ecosystem and do your stuff. Why should companies looking at the broader North American perspective consider Canada in the first place?
A lot of reasons. I mean, we've read these articles. They're kind of interesting. There's been so many of them which are talking about the rise of centers outside of Silicon Valley, right? Even in the US. In music, the shift is arguably, into a city like Nashville, or in film and lifestyle, it's into Miami. Or into, from e-commerce, it's into New York. So there's been a shift in the US, but more importantly, and to your question, other cities and centers around the world have risen in terms of their tech prominence. And really what that means is, what is it like to be an entrepreneur in that place? And it's not just the company, I think, running the company, but you have to also live and feel safe and feel welcome. And so one of the obvious points about Canada is that it's a country predicated on immigrants. My parents immigrated. I was born in Canada, but my parents obviously immigrated from India. And, a city like Toronto, I'm guessing it's come up already in maybe some of your earlier talks, but according to the United Nations, the most multicultural city in the world, has the highest percentage of foreign-born residents of any major city in the world. It's over 50%. There's a lot of people from the South Asian diaspora here coming in every day. Even in the pandemic, there are arrivals of permanent residents and people who are coming here on express entry visas to work in the tech ecosystem is happening every single day. And the conditions for the companies are quite strong here. I would say one more thing that doesn't get spoken about a lot, and I think it actually is interesting from an Indian context, is there's much less internal job shifting from important employees within companies in Canada versus the US. And I think in India, it's even more pronounced than in the US, where people are, kind of leaving one good opportunity for another for a slightly higher pay packet or slightly bigger options pool participation. Canadians, for whatever reason, are quite loyal to their companies, which leads to you can establish a more effective culture than in some other places and count on your employees being there, not always having to worry that they're about to go to a competitor. But livability of cities, it's a very dynamic city. It's a very exciting place to live. As I mentioned, home to a lot of immigrants. It's getting more expensive, which is not a positive signal for coming here. But the talent pool of engineers, software developers, designers, marketers, business people is quite deep, and that's proven by all the interest of large tech companies that are announcing big offices in Canada, and particularly in Toronto, sometimes also in Vancouver, sometimes in Montreal, and even a few other cities. But they're coming here because they know that our universities are producing a lot of smart people eager to join companies. And compared to the US, salaries with our Canadian dollar being about 20% discounted to a US dollar, a little more than 20% usually. And some other benefits that you have here, it's a more efficient way to run a company in terms of cost.
Great that you touch upon the point of talent, because someone who's known to you, Lloyd Lobo of Boast AI, he was one of the speakers early on, and he referenced you a few times. But he was also making this point around talent and the stickability of talent with companies, and why it is easier to build a company much longer with lesser capital because talent sticks around for a while. So moving from that, given that Canada is a relatively smaller market with roughly 35 million people, and because you have kind of dealt with a good number of Indian startups over the years, whether in the US or in Canada, from an Indian startup ecosystem perspective, are there specific kind of startups that are better cut out to make Canada their home?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't always know which ones they are, but it does match with the strength of the industry and kind of the flow of money. So here, there's been so much focus on AI, for example, machine learning and deep technology. There are these things that the Canadian government has done, rightly or wrongly. I'm not arguing for the efficiency of these kind of initiatives, but there is a lot of money in things called super cluster initiative for AI, or there are some programs where if you're an entrepreneur with a deep technical domain and you're showing up here in a certain location within Canada where there's depth, then that industry aligns well with you. Now at Techstars, I want to just shift it. We're a city program, so we're open to any industry vertical. So it can be, any type of tech company, apart from maybe like hardcore biologics manufacturing or, real deep life science, because we're not really equipped. We don't have wet labs, and, we really, run as a typical tech accelerator with a bunch of desks on a WeWork when we are in operation physically. But machine learning and AI is an area we love to see that. E-commerce with the presence of Shopify, we've now seen, and I don't think it's always been in the case, but there's a lot of direct-to-consumer brands and companies doing package delivery logistics and other platforms for e-commerce. And of course, that's become the most important way that we all around the world are essentially surviving now is through e-commerce. Fintech. I want to say you had Kanchan on with Remitter. Definitely we're a banking center. One of the world's, I would say actually Toronto is interestingly the top city in the world where you have the equal presence of banking headquarter decision making in sort of financial services, wealth management, stock trading, cryptocurrency, payments, loyalty, all of that, and software development, like talent, meaning that we are producing a lot of software developers every year from the universities and people just working here and moving here. So as a result, fintech is very exciting to grow from Toronto. But other areas like marketplaces and on-demand economy and gaming, even hardware, where we see it all here. And so really, it's about do you see this a place you want to be, or you don't even have to be here. Well, I'm not advocating either for moving to Canada as a permanent resident, but if you feel this is a good place to have your North American headquarters for ease of operation and making it a fairly efficient place to run the company, the US is just, it's on the doorstep. It's very easy to go and do your sales meetings. And of course, now it's all Zoom anyway.
Cool. Thanks for that. So now, so you have seen companies move to Canada from different parts of the world, and without keeping it restricted just to India, what are the do's and don'ts a company which is already established elsewhere but moving or relocating to Canada needs to be aware of, if there are any?
Well, at the high level, intellectual property, making sure you're doing a proper IP rights transfer if that's what you need. Thinking through any issues with taxation or being a company in two countries. Some sort of sensible decision as to what's the top company, where is that going to be, and why. If the interest is making it in Canada, where it's British common law system, rule of law, it's very consistent and understood. It is reasonable to open up a company here, hire a reasonable lawyer. Don't pay too much, just do it properly, but have the company set up and maybe add one or two people who are Canadians to your board of directors. I've joined quite a few boards of directors, even in times when I really wasn't wanting to or expecting to, but in the transition period of setting up the company, because something as simple as opening up a bank account here, they really expect that there's somebody who's Canadian who they can check credit scores, and it does mean that you sort of put yourself out there on your director of companies that you may not know every aspect of their day-to-day operations. So there is a level of confidence with the founders. But if the goal is to kind of come here, then that helps. You set up the company, you continue. Of course, I think we're talking to mostly people from an economy with 1.3 billion people, and here we're talking, as you said, a country of 35 million. The market is generally not going to be for Canadians, right? What investors get excited about is huge markets: India, China, now the rise of Africa. But doing it with a globally mindset, a company with a global mindset and team understands that complicated country of India and how to do business there. But being a Canadian company, with a headquarters here in downtown Toronto, where investors can deploy some money, exciting. That doesn't happen easily when you think that angel investors or even seed funds from North America, even the US, are writing checks into India. That's not as common as it could be, and it's because it's a complicated place. So doing it in a place like Canada makes things kind of palatable for investors, and they can kind of see the company and appreciate that we're talking about a big market that's growing so fast, and now we can be even a small investor but participate in that huge growth.
But so for overseas companies, and this is a question that we've got from at least 4 different startup founders who I think are very keen or interested in moving to Canada. And their question is around, for an overseas company relocating or moving to Canada, how easy or difficult is it to raise investments locally?
Well, it's not easy. I actually think it's easier to raise, high net worth money in the United States, where the tech, like in a place like Silicon Valley, I've seen more of those investments happen. But the good news is we're seeing more of it here. And particularly when you start to tap into people who come from some sort of global diaspora themselves, where they've moved here. It doesn't have to be from India; it can be from anywhere. We have so many really brilliant people in the finance and tech ecosystem who've come from Iran or Pakistan or Nigeria. Even now, we're seeing, and they are able to appreciate the insights of that founder team and make an investment. So it's not easy, but it can be done. I think it's about how you articulate what you're doing and kind of become maybe it's through that's why to just digress, that's why I think accelerators can be very, very effective for international startups, because we have, I'll speak about mine, there are many others, but we have the ability to de-risk an entrepreneur team from another country because of the understanding that we went through a very rigorous selection process. This company is here because we're the first check or an early investor. We're not doing it for any sort of immigration scheme or any purpose to, just charge money to bring you to another country like a consultant. No interest in that, and investors know that too. So therefore, it creates alignment that we're in it the way you are, and we saw some sort of talent here, and we did some homework and due diligence, and we might even continue to invest. So it creates that kind of momentum, and of course, you can see that in programs like Y Combinator, 500 Startups, many others, where the companies are discovered from global markets, invested in, and then before long, it's something you read about in Crunchbase as a nice funding round came together. Without the accelerator, it gets a little harder, I think. You have to then take it on yourself to find those early investors through your own networks, and maybe you can do that. Maybe you have them, and then in which case, we'll see those same Crunchbase articles pop up.
So the next three questions I have are linked, and because you spoke briefly about immigration and PR, the next three questions are linked to that. So especially for your Techstars program, yes, now all the programs are virtual, but for companies coming through to your programs, is there any kind of recommended visa that most of them they would funnel through or come through?
Well, we are designated with the startup visa, and I heard some reference. I don't know, has that been a big topic over this session? It's not a visa that gets a lot of use in Canada because of how it's set up, and it actually relates to the topic we just talked about, whether investors are really able and eager to invest internationally and exploit an immigration advantage, which actually does something called, I call it country arbitrage. You're taking a investment valuation in a country like, say, India, with a certain constructive team and market size and traction, and flipping it to a North American market. The valuation may be much higher had that company been in North America to begin with, right? So investors can use that as an investment tool. I don't know if they really are. That's one challenge, I think, here. But coming to Canada, like I said, we're a country of immigrants. There are many ways to come here. There are no shortage of immigrants here through normal channels. There's also now the express entry visas and ways to bring talent into companies, which might be a strategy as well. You take a job, and depending on how early stage you are, for instance, I run the Founder Institute pre-accelerator here, and I know there's a few chapters in India. I do it as a volunteer, but I've been doing it long enough for 5-6 years that I know there's a lot of early stage entrepreneurs who really, whether they realize it or not, they're not going to be able to make that company stick. It's not going to be as viable as they expected, but they're talented and they want to do something. They're very ambitious. So to come in as a key hire for another company and get that express visa entry, once you're here, and you can then start to be, let your entrepreneurial passions unleash and run companies. And by then you could probably get your extensions and lead to permanent residency and then citizenship. I've seen it. I see it all the time.
That actually leads in well to a next question, and because you talk about residency, so one of the respondents to our questionnaire has asked that he is a Canadian PR holder, and the PR is valid until 2022. And does holding a PR before landing in Canada give you added advantages or benefits in setting up a company locally?
Yeah, it gives you advantages. You don't have to be concerned with your status and just being here. So you can, if you have your PR, essentially you're under the clock. You need to start to come here. You have to be here 3 years out of the first 5 and show that, you actually do have an interest to live in Canada. And of course you can travel back and forth and you can launch a company. So it's not tied to any particular job. You have your permanent residency. I suggest if you have that and it's important to you, you start to use it. Tricky time now with pandemic and restricted travel, but I think I'm imagining the government is taking that into account on the time you're supposed to spend in Canada. You can do a lot of things virtually. Without the PR, then it's there's some other things you have to consider. Sometimes people are coming through the student programs. You know, you graduate from any university or college, you get to work here like 2 years, and from that, I see them ending up working at a Shopify or at an ed tech company like Top Hat, Desire to Learn. There's some big companies here hiring lots of people, and then from there, I sometimes see those same people. I don't know them at the beginning. I don't know everybody, but I sometimes see those kind of people then launch a startup, maybe through Founder Institute, or maybe they apply to Techstars. And what they're doing is they're coming from a company that brought them to Canada, and they're working here, but they're kind of doing a side hustle. So they're working in a company, but there's a startup there that they have as well, and they're somehow managing. And the other thing is, when you come to a place, and if I can imagine, if I was living in India and by myself, if I was a lot younger, let's say, and I moved to Canada by myself, I would have a lot of time on my hands to work like crazy and to do those two things, and work at night and do a tech company back with my team in India. It could be done, and I see people doing it, but it's a lot of work.
That's a lot of tips and ideas for some people in the audience, and this of course is kind of getting recorded, so we'll kind of put out snippets whoever has not been able to attend. So
it's
the next
expensive to live here. That's one of the issues. Is like sometimes people come and without a big funding round, and the company of course has expenses, and there's teams and salaries have to be paid, and so. This city is just speaking about Toronto, but Canada generally, like it's not inexpensive for housing. So you should think of a way to kind of give yourself a runway to live and to rent a condo or even if you share a shared living, you have to have the way to keep yourself going here. And so sometimes working in good tech companies or even banks, even regular companies, the salaries are pretty good, and you can kind of earn a good living, and maybe that's what you want anyway. Like that's not a bad outcome.
Yeah, and it also gives you the cost arbitrage, right? Like, I mean, if you're doing it as a side hustle, the building of the company, and you have people or team in India which is doing that, I guess it gives you that little bit of a cost arbitrage, and you're able to kind of do your work. You're able to put in some hours post work, working with the team back in India and building a company, and eventually that becomes your main thing rather than the job that you're doing. The last one in terms of visa and immigration. So there is a question which says it's a paragraph from the startup visa program, and it basically reads that the designated organization supporting you holds at least 50% voting rights in the business. And does voting rights mean equity? And if yes, isn't 50% too much for early stage companies coming through the startup visa route?
The rule. The designated entity is not supposed to own 50% of your company. You're supposed to own more than 50%, the people immigrating. And to be honest, you should own a lot more than that, I would think. It's your company. Do not give 50% of your company to some organization that's there to try to immigrate you to Canada. That is a crazy proposition. I mean, I only know, I'll speak for Techstars. We make investments of $120,000 US. And typically it's 7%, 8%, 9% at most common shares in the company for the money. And that doesn't matter if you're immigrating or not. So giving up half your company to I don't know. I don't fully understand the question. I hope that's not what's happening, because that wouldn't be fair to anybody, particularly you. So don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, I think it's not a Canadian government site from where this link has been posted either. It's just for Canada or whatever. Okay, so I have one last question from the pool, after which we can open it up to the audience and probably take a couple more. So, okay, Sunil, looking at companies like Paytm, and this is my question, looking at companies like Paytm that have gone on to set up Paytm labs in Canada, it's essentially a dev shop, because Paytm does not really have big business in Canada like it does in India. So it's almost like reversing the trend of outsourcing, but it is more of high value or tech jobs or tech talent that Paytm doesn't find in India, because of which they have set up Paytm labs in Toronto and then expanded it into Vancouver as well. So I mean, are you seeing that as an increasing trend globally? Companies from elsewhere, unicorns, decacorns, leveraging Canada more from a talent perspective and kind of reverse outsourcing, so to say?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, American companies, there's been a long run of it, and it's been increasing. We've even seen, for instance, a big announcement. One of our famous AI companies based in Montreal, Element AI, was recently acquired by a U.S. publicly traded company called ServiceNow. When you read the articles, you sort of see what the purpose of that acquisition was. Well, they've assembled an enormous number of PhDs and experts in machine learning, and had a business model that was whatever it was. And now, really the value is in acquiring those people and putting them into a division of this American company. We've seen that a lot. Now, your question about Paytm, I did notice when Paytm came here many years back, and they have they have their own standalone building in downtown Toronto that says Paytm. I thought that's really unusual that an Indian tech company is now setting here, and it's not a business process outsourcing company like a Wipro or TCS or anything. It's an actual product innovation, payment technology company, and it's here. Why is it here? Well, they sense that there's a lot of that same talent that other companies sense that is here. And then I expected something else. And I haven't been there a lot, and I don't know a lot, too much about Paytm, but I had gone in a couple times, and I was expecting to see an entire building filled with, Indo-Canadians, Indians working for Paytm, which wasn't the case at all. There were some, but it was, typical tech company, and then I expected, maybe the salaries will be really low. These are just my own biases. Thinking, and then I talked to a few people, and they said, no, it's really we get paid I took this job, I was working at Amazon before or something, So it's to your question, will you see more of that? I don't know, like a Ola or some company would come here and hire engineers, maybe. Why not? And if they do, then maybe those are great companies to join and get great positions.
Absolutely. So now we have, so I'm done with the questions that I had. So I'm reading out a question from one that someone has posted. So Kaizad, who's the CEO of a company called Get Natty. So it's a fashion tech startup, a video commerce startup. What are the best accelerators and seed stage investors to apply into in Canada for companies that are beyond idea stage or proof of concept or early signs of product market fit?
Well, so there's a definition that we should always talk about between incubators and accelerators. I think your question is accelerator, and I think when you ask that, you're sort of thinking about Y Combinator or Texas. One's the brands 500, Acceleprise. So there aren't really a lot of accelerators in Canada. There are many more in the U.S. and around the world, but we have a lot of incubators. We have a lot of innovation hubs. Okay, so these are places where you can go and get support. You can get connections. Now, that's different. It's not usually they're not equity investors. They're not taking any stake in your company for money. So you're going to be getting some level of support from them. In almost all cases, you need to be Canadian. So, because they're funded generally by governments, whether federal, provincial, municipal, or nonprofit agencies, in direct or indirect money, they're not really designed to support companies or entrepreneurs in other countries because it's, Canadian taxpayer dollars that are being put to work. So if you are Canadian and you're here and you're just living here, and it doesn't matter citizen or PR, if you're a Canadian and there's an entity here, then you will be able to tap into their support, whatever that's worth. Okay. But to be honest, in terms of accelerators, there are not that many. Montreal, there's an accelerator called Founder Fuel, which Real Ventures has run for some time. Founder Fuel, and they operate on a batch-based, cohort. Many companies apply, come in at a certain time. There's some investment made, and then there's a demo day, graduation at the end. For the Canadians, there's programs like Next. There's one called Creative Destruction Lab, CDL, which I don't know as much about it as I'd like to. They run it themselves. And they have it's university linked, so they have campuses and university. As I understand, it's meant to kind of stimulate innovation from within university labs and university held IP and professor IP and postdocs and grads. Highline is one that I started because to be extreme. They have a model where it's a little bit of company creation and corporate innovation. So you can talk to them. There's a bunch on the if you're back to that startup visa question. There's a bunch listed on those designated entities. They're not all accelerators. They're I would say the majority are nonprofit incubators, and they should be there to just be helpful to you. They shouldn't be there to take a bunch of your company or anything. They should be there. Their goal should be just bring you to Canada because you're going to create jobs here and create increased wealth in Canada, and we want you here versus some other place in the world. So they should get we want to land you in a part of the country. I think in Eastern Canada, like in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, where there's opportunities and there's some they want people, because we have migration movements within Canada, like where the big cities like Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal and Ottawa are attracting people from some smaller centers, and so they're having population deficits. So maybe bringing entrepreneurs into a place where you can live, but also where you can contribute immediately, and you'll be doing something very innovative and bringing a global perspective. That's fantastic for a region, and they should want you to go there and do it, and be very appreciative that you're there, and hopefully make it easy for you to come.
I'll just take one more. So there's someone who has done a raise of hands. So Gaurav, I think I'll need your help in allowing Aditya to come on stage. So Aditya is the innovation head for iHub Gujarat, which is a state-owned large organization. So hey, Aditya, you're good to go.
Yeah, hi. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you are audible.
Yes. First of all, my name is Aditya, and I work as an innovation head at Gujarat. So actually, I had this question in my mind. It is a bit out of context as we are talking about only startups here, startup moving to North America. So I do want to get some insights on the opportunities for people who are working as enablers in startup ecosystem. So, is there any opportunities for them to move to North America?
Good.
People that are working in the innovation ecosystem, but that is what we were. I think that's what applies to all of what we were talking. Are you saying to just come as someone in the ecosystem there who can come and work in the ecosystem here?
Exactly.
Well, I would, if I was to be a public policy person, which I'm not, I would say that would be very strategic and positive for Canada. Imagine taking someone from this Gujarat iHub, innovation network that you would be just using you as an example, would be well versed, well connected, understand the ecosystem, or someone like Ajay. If he wasn't Ajay, you're a Canadian.
No.
No? Okay. I thought I always thought you were. I've met you here so many times. Okay. I thought you had your PR. But someone like Ajay or you, Aditya, would be brilliant to have in Canada, because it's what you're going to do implicitly is bring the global mindset and the connectivity to small market Canada, right? Where our startups and entrepreneurs and upstart business people aren't really, as well versed in what's going on around the world, particularly these big markets. And so you're able to basically be a catalyst that can connect ecosystems. And I feel that's very, very powerful. That's why I love Techstars so much, is because we have 45 accelerators in the world, and we connect with each other. So I'm on the call. Yesterday I zoomed in my Tel Aviv, Israel colleague to an AMA that I did for applications for Techstars Toronto with 30 minutes notice, and we do that on purpose because we can show that the network of mentors and investors, corporate innovation partners, government agencies, all of that in a country like Israel gets connected into the Techstars companies in Canada, right? And so your role, if you were to come over, would be very valuable, because you would expand the thinking and the opportunities for the, clients of the innovation ecosystem and wherever you would end up. So I would say that's good to do. Now, can you do it? That's the question, right? Of course, you have to get it. You'd have to be hired. So I would hope that, again, if I ran the organizations, I would try to hire people from other networks and say, here's your offer. I'm going to bring you, we want you here. We're going to do the, the work visa applications, and we're going to, take that upon ourselves, and because we want you to come, and here's your compensation, and we are welcome to stay as long as the work visa allows you to. And if you want to stay longer, then you can start these other applications of PR and whatnot. Once you're here, that becomes a lot easier. You don't need things like startup visas. You're already in Canada working, and you just extend it, and then you end up like everybody else who's from India here, or Pakistan, Bangladesh. There's so many people. You just ended up living here if you want. So I hope that answers it.
Sure. Thank you for that answer.
Thanks, Aditya, for the question. Anyone else? We can just take one more question, possibly. Anyone having a question, just you can do either raise of hand or probably just put in a question in the chat window and I'll pick it up. Sunil has anyways put his email address in the live chat section. We have one more person who has raised. Yeah, we have Subu from Discover Dollar, who is a Techstars alumni.
Oh, wow. Super. All right.
Hi, Sunil. Good to see you.
Did you do Techstars Bangalore?
No, I did Techstars Berlin in 2018 and the JAG.
Okay, Berlin. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Couple of things. My experience with Techstars has been great. That was our first exposure to go global, but Europe was the wrong place for us. But through that, we connected to Canada, US, and now we have. I can say we have a good set of customers in Canada as well. Including Canadian Tire, Hudson Bay, etc. More than half a million opportunity we have grabbed there. So my question is more on I already have a PR for Canada. So would you advise to move the whole founder team to, because we have a lot of customers there, would you advise coming to North America, staying in Toronto, traveling to US? Is that a model which works for a typical company who is having their engineering team here, but selling to North America? Or is there anything else as a model which has worked under many startups you have already seen?
Yeah. I mean, it is a model that does work. I'm not here to advocate that all the brilliant entrepreneurs from India leave India and move to Canada. Like, believe me, I'm not here to try to even suggest that. But if you are interested as part of your life journey to do something new and try a new country and expand in global markets, I think this is probably better than most other cities that I can think of. So I'm an advocate for what's happening in Canada in terms of coming here and like starting or bringing your tech company and bringing some founders with you and tackling the US market versus, maybe going to the US. I think coming here is a trend and the rise of Toronto is real. Other cities as well, but I think I'm just living here right now. I think I'll live all over Canada. But really, if it's what you want, and India, I've been to India many times. I sometimes think I want to live in India. Like I want to live in Mumbai and like experience it and show it to my kids and get back to roots and culture and I think at some point I'm going to do that. But I think it's just part of what you want, what's good for the business. And I think in today's modern entrepreneur, it's really not the focus is building billion-dollar companies, right? That's what drives you. You want to create enormous value for your company, your shareholders, your customers, make an impact in the world. And wherever you feel that is best conditions, you're going to probably think about going there. And you were in Berlin already. And you experienced Berlin, and I've experienced Berlin. It's amazing in many ways, but maybe it's not the perfect place to live for you, and I don't think it's the perfect place to live for me. It's a fantastic city. It comes down to your personal ambition and the timing in your life. But if you are interested, if you want to do it, I think it will work well.
Sure. Thanks, Sunil. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any one last question? We have Sunil with us for a few more minutes. One last question. If not, we can say thank you to Sunil for the good 40 odd minutes he has spent with us, giving good insights, answering questions, also some deeper insights about how do you go about kind of making Canada home. You're trying to build a global company out of North America. Cool. I don't think we have any further questions. So thanks Sunil for taking the time. Yes, go ahead.
No, I just said I put in the chat two things. One is I put the application deadline for Techstars. So this is what I'm focusing on right now is the next 10 companies. We've had some really, I think some really strong accelerator batches here from Techstars Toronto over the last 3 years. And so now this is for the 4th year program. And so if I don't really know who's on this call, this is kind of asymmetrical. So
sure.
I think Ajay told me there's a bunch of great startups from India that that are part of Startup Reso. That's fantastic. Good enough. I know that the quality is going to be high. So if you're interested in applying, it's important to get it started by Sunday. Just at least get it started and finish it soon after. And so that's one thing. Then I put my email in. For that, like, you can ping me a question, add me on LinkedIn, no problem. I'll do my best. But if you're specifically in the process of like startup visa, because there was so much comment on that, I'm happy to like hear what your plan is or what your offer is, and I can give you my perspective, because I've been aware of that program since day one, and I'll be happy to speak to you like one-on-one, give you some of my own personal advice if you're in that already. If you're just thinking about it, you know, the information's online, and you know all those entities are listed. You have to kind of get to them, but there are some things I will tell you if you want to talk to me privately.
Sunil, there's this one last question, and this links back to your Techstars conversation. How helpful is the Techstars community from other cohorts, other cities? I think so. If you join Techstars Toronto or Bangalore.
So, so the way I look at it is that I'm kind of looking after a lot of the Techstars presence in Canada. And many companies go to different Techstars, like in Berlin or Bangalore or in London, New York, or in Toronto. But they come to Canada. They're either Canadians. Usually, they're Canadian people that went to a Techstars for 3 months and then came back to Canada. So what we try to do very proactively is build a network for all the alumni who are in a given place. And so we do things, we gather, we have Slack groups and newsletters and WhatsApp groups, and I'm very known to those people, so I'm trying to help. Then at Techstars, at a high level, we do community programming, and we have software that unites us. So we have our own internal tools. One product is called Techstars Connect, and we kind of share, lessons learned, hiring opportunities, questions on legal structure. We do all that within the organization, and we now have 3,000, probably 200 portfolio companies, 3,200 around the world, and it's growing by about 500 companies per year. So it's getting to be a huge network, and I think it's a very, it's a great network. It's getting to be very cohesive, and we do some events like FounderCon, where we gather. But of course, with pandemic, it's been an issue with, physical meeting, but we're doing more and more of it online. And I feel like it's working well, and our network is just powerful and big. And it's a similar thing you see with Y Combinator. It's a great network around the world, and people wear it with pride. And just like we saw Aditya come on, I'm a Techstars alum from Berlin. There's a fraternity and cohesiveness amongst alumni, and we try to keep that going.
Cool. I'll just end it with that. Thank you so much, Sunil, for taking time at such short notice and doing an awesome AMA, as well as taking some impromptu questions. Look forward to keeping in touch, and I'm sure that people in the audience will reach out to you, and we'll definitely reconnect on the whole application process for Techstars and send some good companies your way. So have a good day, and thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.